Hi, this is Dr. Marty Klein. What were you doing a year ago today? Well, a year ago today, I was finishing my Canadian lecture tour, Toronto, Calgary, and a day in Vancouver training therapists about intimacy. As always, the British Columbia Psychological Association was gracious and well organized. About half of the people in attendance had heard me speak there last year on infidelity and cybersex, and of course, that's a lovely compliment that people return. So, intimacy. Therapists are as interested in intimacy as everyone else. What exactly does it mean? How do we create it? Why is it so hard to maintain? Our patients have trouble talking about this magical thing, and so do professionals. So I like to give therapists a useful description, a vocabulary, and a way of working with people that empowers them too. So at the seminar, the elements of intimacy that I discussed include communications infrastructure. Do people feel understood way more than they don't? Do people know how to get each other's attention without creating drama? Explicit values consensus. Do people believe they want compatible things from their relationship and from life? Reliable commitments. Do people keep their promises, both small and large? There are no small promises in my experience as a marriage counselor. The ability and willingness to self-soothe and self-discipline. Do people manage themselves in adult fashion, even when they feel disappointed, lonely, jealous, sick, or they desperately need a shower? Insights about power dynamics. Can people ask for what they want in a straightforward, understandable way? Ability to manage conflict. Can people disagree as partners rather than as adversaries? Is the goal of conflict to win or to understand? Acknowledgement of existential issues. Can people admit that they have the normal fears and challenges of being human? These are the things I told these therapists, and these are the things that I tell my patients are involved in this magical thing, intimacy. Notice that sexuality itself is not on this list. Many psychologists in attendance there were surprised, especially since they know me as a sex therapist. Sex is not necessary for intimacy, and there's plenty of sex that is not intimate. That's why when my patients use intimacy as a synonym for sex, like we'd like to be intimate more often or we'd like to have more variety in our intimacy, I gently guide them to the word sex. And I suggest that we use the word intimacy primarily to describe an aspect of our emotions or a quality of the relationship. Of course, many people desire sex in their couple or their relationship, and I talk about that in the office every week, hour after hour. But whereas people typically want to talk about desire and orgasms, positions and erections, I usually think that stuff can wait. First, I want to talk about those elements of intimacy that we were just talking about. And so before I ask detailed questions about lubrication and masturbation and clitorises and fantasies, I usually ask about other things, like, can people talk to each other? Do they feel valued by their partner? Is there general agreement about the kind of relationship that they want to have? Can they manage conflict without being mean or keeping grudges? Can they admit when they've made a mistake? Do they accept how the other person feels, even if it seems confusing or foolish? Does each person accept genuinely gentle criticism? And can they talk about their fear of growing older, their fear of trusting, their fear of, well, intimacy? When people have that kind of a relationship, then we can talk about oral sex and period sex and BDSM sex and every other kind of sex. Without it, we can talk about sex, but enjoyable sex in a long-term relationship that's filled with mistrust or selfishness or manipulation just isn't sustainable. Well, back to Vancouver, after lunch, we did talk about a few other things. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, like, I'm just no good at this communication thing, or given my awful first marriage, I'll probably never trust women again. We talked about the categories that people construct, like clueless engineer or drama queen or oversexed, and then conveniently forget that we make up those categories that feel so suffocating. And we also talked about the rules of fair fighting. I'm always talking about fair fighting, cooperative conflict. Now, in my 39 years as a therapist, almost every couple has told me they have communication problems. And my answer is usually some version of, well, we'll see about that. Because in my experience, most couples communicate pretty clearly. They just don't like what they hear. In troubled relationships, people communicate their disrespect, their desperation for attention, their lack of trust, and their greed all the time. They communicate clearly by being chronically late, by forgetting things that their partner has said are important, by changing the subject when they're being criticized, by doing exactly what they said they wouldn't do, and then by making apologies that are obviously perfunctory. And then these same people want to know how they can be more intimate. Well, whether they mean more sex or getting along better, I would love to tell them, but I'm afraid not everybody really wants to hear the answers to their most urgent questions. Well, I'm Dr. Marty Klein. Thanks for joining me. Hey, I do a little video quickie like this every Friday. To subscribe, just click the red button below.